Welcome to another EverSky. Well, it's okay, it's not EverSky now. And welcome to another EverSky/Hope Developer Diary. So I've talked to you about these kind of devices before. So the blue device is a snapping device, green is physics gun, that moves physics stuff around. Hands are nothing yet, they're going to be something eventually, I think. So this brown kind of thing, I'm sorry about all of the program art stuff, we'll get to that eventually. So this is the first person build cursor. So the idea of this is that you create physics objects and place them in the world. But what I'm kind of trying to show here is that they're not great for a lot of the well, they're not great for building structure. It's kind of interesting really that it's actually quite fun playing with the physics properties of the physics gun, but when you're actually trying to create things with it, it's actually quite fiddly because you can't really you can control the depth a little bit by pointing at things, but actually it's not the best for building things like continuous platforms and structures that have to snap together. And it's that I was really thinking of talking about for this video. So you can see here that I've added a grid snap to the actual kind of control, so the cursor itself snaps quite nicely to different grid coordinates, and I can change the size of the grid, which I'll show you eventually in this video. But unfortunately the first person view doesn't allow you to control the depth so well, because it basically does raycast out into the world and moves a block to the front of that raycast. So I'm showing you here how kind of hard it is to control any of the positioning. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just not ideal. And it seems like you're going to spend quite a bit of your time with the physics gun just messing around with objects, but it always felt kind of wrong. There was no solid foundations, and part of that is because I didn't want to look at having to do all the art for it yet, and well, I haven't got the art for it yet, so it's not really too much of a problem. But I started thinking about designing a better way of constructing things, and I came up with this idea of a build mode. So basically you'll what you didn't see there was that I switched to a different device, and that device activates a build drone. I haven't done the user interface for it yet, but this is essentially what it'll do. It will basically make you have a flyable cursor, so you can rotate around the center of this point with the mouse, and then the object that you're sort of looking at will snap to the grid, pretty much the same way as the other cursor did. So you can play with different grid sizes, and here I'm showing you sort of different grid sizes for different snaps. This one's 20, I think it is, or put it this way, it's not the right size for this block. So at least you can get some sort of reasonably controllable structures. But here I've switched it so that the grid snap is the size of this particular piece of block, so you can see how fast and accurate it is to just create a relatively solid platform, which is what you'd be doing a lot of the time when you're building out the actual rig structure. And I haven't fixed up all of the issues with it yet. There's still quite a lot of usability things, but I think ultimately this is the right way to go. So here I've switched it onto a 1 meter block snap, so 1 meter's about as close as I want to get to allowing kind of fine control. But of course the more fine control you have, the slower it is to do, so I tend to if you hold the shift key down, you go into really slow kind of movement mode. This allows you to control the cursor a lot better, but it gets kind of dull waiting for it to move, so I'll have some kind of tweaking thing for that. But this means that I can just snap these blocks together based on snapping them to this 1 meter grid. And you'll see that I'm flipping the axes of some of these blocks. That's a simple right mouse button to do 90-degree rotation on one of the axes, and you can then press the Alt key to flip it on another axis as well, so you can basically get whichever angle you want 90-degree snaps for. And of course all of this stuff is still free form, so this is just kind of me with all of the snaps enabled. But you can do freeform block placement, you can have angled platforms if you want. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. So I've made a simple box here. The one thing that I found interesting actually is that although this kind of mode is a lot more efficient in terms of being able to control and navigate the blocks when you're building, it's actually not as fun as the physics-based building stuff. I guess it's it's certainly useful in that you can create structures a lot faster, so the idea of creating structures efficiently is a useful thing to do, but I guess it just loses a little bit of its kind of randomness, a little bit of the charm of making things with physics, maybe, because these blocks obviously aren't meant to be necessarily physics based, although I'll show you an example of one that is later on. So I'm just going to place some ships around this area that I've created, and the idea is that you'll create the rig, and you'll have like landing bays and those kind of things sort of stuck out and attached to it. Showed you an error with the ship's physics bounding box there, so the ship flew off, and this one will as well, I think. Oh, and it shows you that you can go up and down with the cursor as well if you want to. And so I'm just going down the 1 block increments there. Yeah, so physics still not quite right for the ship again. So you can see the ship snapping here at 1 meter intervals. So I've just changed the grid snapping there so it gets a bit bigger. You can see that it's a lot faster to create relatively large sets of structures. I'll show you an example of a smaller build in a few seconds, but the thing that I was after with this particular mode was that you could actually create structure big enough to be noticeable as your rig. So things like bedroom blocks, bunk blocks, those kind of things will be in this mode. Any large platform, any walkways and things that need to snap to each other, they'll pretty much have to use this to get anywhere near useful placement. So here's me trying to be artistic with the actual blocks, and given there's only one, it's not massively entertaining. And I've got a block base 10 unit grid snap on, so obviously the height's kind of a little bit off. But the idea is that you'll build these kind of platform areas and you'll box them out with accommodation blocks or facilities blocks or whatever. Here I've switched to 1 meter grid snap again, just to try and get this lined up so that it's placing on top of the central pillar. Obviously once I've got more artwork together for the structural build mode, it'll be a lot more obvious how these things will go together. And hopefully I can give people a chance to play around with that mode, see if it's interesting and useful. So here I'm going to start looking to place some smaller objects in the world, and obviously as you get a bigger object you probably want to zoom out a little bit more. So for this object I need to be in, so you can use the mouse wheel to scroll in and view objects closer up. So this was the use case that I actually built this mode for, which was creating lines of objects. It turned out that doing that with a physics device was just too painful. And here the snap went a little bit awry, and that's another feature that I've added, which is an undo redo system. So basically anything that you create you can undo. Haven't done the position updates yet for the undo system, but eventually that will work as well, so you'll be able to undo any edits that you make to the world in the build mode. But actually just having undo is kind of useful still, especially when your grid's toggles go a little bit awry. So yeah, I mean you can create a line of objects, which is kind of useful really. It means that I need to rebuild a lot of, I'll certainly need to rebuild out a lot of assets with the grid in mind, but they should go together quite modularly. So this box is 1 meter unit, which means that it works on the 1 unit, 1 meter grid very easily. So what I'm trying to do here is create a small sort of cluster of boxes that you might see on a pier or something. So a lot of what you'll see in the actual game will be trade goods and sort of facilities and things deposited in on some platform somewhere, and you'll, as a player, you'll have to organise where these things go and maybe install them, build them, use them as resources. But at least now, you can actually control the things in the world a little bit more usefully. And just to show you that the physics kind of based thing still works, this is a cargo container, and it will basically, it's a physics powered object, so it'll drop to the floor and do all sorts of funny things if you spawn them inside each other. But this means that you can place these containers relatively easily now. Do 90 degrees toggles and those kind of things. Spawn them next to each other. You can see how a lot more controllable this thing is. The gridding system isn't perfect still, but once that's finished it should be a lot more, a lot simpler to edit things on grids. So it's more of a bulk edit thing, I guess. What I didn't show you here actually is that I've implemented user interface from the guy who Gary's Mod did a user interface library, and I've implemented that. I use the fast key, which is the page up and page down key in edit mode, to switch objects, but obviously some of those objects need to be filtered out because maybe they don't exist in script properly yet or whatever. So eventually you'll just have a palette of objects that you can select from, things that you can afford, because actually creating objects in build mode will cost money. So you'll need to think how you're going to generate the revenue to create things, especially when you're expanding your platform structure. So each one of these crates would cost me money to place. Maybe that would be a trade good that I would send off to somewhere. And for some weird reason I decided to place crates at the end of these, and then fly over there and try and place a crate on top of one of those. Which is a bad plan. So that's the build cursor mode. It's actually kind of useful, which is always good. Maybe not the most fun thing in the world, but certainly useful. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to show you. I'll show you the user interface for this stuff next week, hopefully, when I've done a bit more work on the UI to make it a bit more understandable. But thanks for watching. I think right now it's about time to undo all of the things that I created and sign off. So if you want to get in touch, ZoomPup on Twitter, zoompup@gmail.com if you want to email me. Get in touch via the mindflock.com website, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Remember, there's always hope. That's so cheesy. Thanks for watching.